So we're going to take a look at the changes to benefits for carers that come into effect from today. That's the 7th of April, 2025, with both changes to payment amounts and entitlement criteria. Now, these annual changes are important, an important moment really to check our benefit situation, I think, more than anything. It's always we don't want to be thinking about it all year round, but it's good to have a sort of check in at least once a year when things change, just to make sure we're receiving everything we're entitled to and that we're not claiming something that we are no longer entitled to as well. So when the government situation changes and they change the benefit amounts and entitlements, it's good to check. But also when our situations change, it's also good to check as well. So think of those two points. So we tend to check in on benefits at least twice a year as Mobilise. But, obviously individuals will do that more as well. Now, benefits can feel complicated, particularly if, you're also got a caring role that's quite overwhelming or if you're new to things. So it's always a good idea to tackle these things with some support. And that might be joining a webinar like this, might be consulting a benefits advisor, looking at stuff online, speaking to someone else that's been through it, asking questions in the community, using your local carer support organisation as well. So many of them will have benefits advisors too. And we'll talk a little bit more later on about where we find that support. And also noticing that the topic of benefits, particularly at the moment, let's not pretend it's not difficult at the moment, can also stir up difficult emotions. So let's not pretend that we're happy that they work fairly for all. There are a lot of people who aren't entitled to benefits, and that can feel unfair. And those that are entitled to benefits, it can feel like it's just not enough, and it's really putting us in a tricky situation. So we really recognise both of those things are really difficult. And we also know there's lots in the news at the moment, recent decisions around PIP being reviewed and the change in criteria for the levels of PIP, etc. That's tough stuff that's going on around us, and it can stir up some big emotions. We will touch on this a bit today, but I'll also try to kind of help us to not stir up those emotions as well. It is what it is at the moment. And if we want to be involved in having a voice in campaigning, that might be right for some of us, but not all of us. I'd hate to force, make anyone feel that that's another expectation on you. But also sometimes just sharing the toughness of that is helpful to an extent. Other people that get it and understand that situation. But there's also that kind of sense of preaching to the converted. Yes, we know it's other people that really need to know about that, whether that be your MP, the general public, and the media, etc., that it would be more helpful to raise awareness amongst that group that have no knowledge of the impact of these caring benefits. Okay, so 7th of April 2025. What are the changes to benefits that are impacting carers? The carers allowance, which is the main benefit for unpaid carers, also called carer support payment now in Scotland. They're transitioning to it. The benefits are essentially the same at the moment, but they're transitioning to a new name as that's coming under the Scottish government now. So the weekly rate has gone from £81.90, small 1.7% increase to £83.30. The other thing that has changed is also, and perhaps more significantly, is the weekly earnings limit. So weekly earnings was 151, is now 196 pounds a week after certain deductions. And we'll talk a little bit more about what those deductions are to help you kind of be able to work that out for yourself and see whether you're eligible. So it may be, for example, if you're working and you were previously earning a little bit too much to claim carers allowance, that now something has changed and you now may be able to apply for carers allowance. It may be you were thinking of reducing your hours, and this might give you some guidance about where the sweet spot will be to do that. Or it may be that your employer was thinking about giving you a pay rise and or something, and that might actually give that benefit, or maybe taking on some extra hours or taking a promotion or something like that as well. So it may make a small difference to some people. I recognize it's a small difference to a small amount of people, but it's still, when you add it up across the country, it's still something to be aware of. And the main changes, similar, are reflected in the key benefits for those we care for, have also had a 1.7% increase. So a particularly small increase this year. And there's, yes, that's what it is. So for those of you that maybe are new to benefits, carers allowance is the benefit that's relevant for unpaid carers. That's for you as the caring person. And we'll talk about the eligibility criteria in a moment. One of the main eligibility criteria is that they will your person you care for will need to be receiving an appropriate benefit. And that's quite often the biggest hurdle, because once they're there, the carers allowance application is actually much smaller. It's that application that can be quite big. So if you've never done anything about benefits before, this is the place to start with the benefit for the person you care for. These have all gone up by 1.7%. So DLA, disability living allowance, is for those under 16, and in Scotland the new benefit is the child disability payment. Personal independence payment is for age 16 up to state pension or adult disability payment in Scotland. And just note underneath, if you are already on PIP when you reach pension age and you continue to claim it, then you stay on PIP, but you can't also apply for attendance allowance, which is the attendance allowance is the relevant benefit for those of state pension age. And then in Scotland, that's also changing. This is a newer one that's just starting to change. Pension age disability payment. Okay, so there we go. So a little bit of a starting point, those main benefits there. Let me just click on, what do we have next? Carers allowance. So that carers allowance had a small increase, and that increase to earnings that you can earn up to a certain amount before you become eligible. So let's have a quick look at the other eligibility criteria for carers allowance. The person you're caring for needs to be receiving an eligible benefit. Now, I put up the main ones on that previous slide, but if they're receiving something else like a war pension or other disability allowances that are kind of a bit more niche and a bit less common, do check on the government website or check on the Mobilise carers allowance checker if those benefits are included. So it's not just those ones. Other disability related benefits also are relevant. So that's, first of all, the first step to do. So if nobody's clearing anything, that's the first thing to go for. That you are also caring over 35 hours a week. Now, sometimes we do need to stop and add up all the bits and bobs that we're doing, the phone calls, the going to get shopping, the things that they just couldn't do without your support. In some cases, it is just the physical being there because they're not safe without you as well. So do think about the number of hours that you're caring. And here's the earnings one, earning under £196 a week after tax, national insurance, and certain expenses. So we'll talk about what those certain expenses are. 16 and over, and not in full-time education. That's quite a tough one. 21 hours is all that counts as full-time education. But you can always check with your education provider as to whether your course is classed as full-time or part-time. And not receiving state pension, the full state pension. So when we get into this sort of territory, this is where a benefits advisor is really helpful to look at your individual situation and your overall household situation as well. So what about this change? Now that the earning threshold's gone up, might somebody new be eligible for carers allowance that wasn't before? So roughly, if you're working 16 hours a week or less at the national living wage, definitely worth looking into it. That's what they've brought it up to be in parity with. So it's kind of caught back up with where it used to be, really, with that sort of 16 hours. So the idea is that having a part-time job and alongside caring may be relevant. If you're earning more than this, so maybe your rate of pay is more than national living wage, or maybe your number of hours is slightly more than 16, you may still be eligible. Your earnings are any income from employment and self-employment after tax, national insurance and expenses. And those expenses include 50% of your pension contributions. So if you're contributing, I don't know, £50 a week into your pension, then £25 of that can come out of that sort of to drop you down from that overall allowance. Okay. Equipment you need to do your job, for example, specialist clothing may apply in certain industries. If you've got to buy your own clothing for work and that's not provided by your employer, then that's counted as an employment expense and will kind of effectively drop your earnings down. And travel costs between workplaces that are not paid for by your employer. So that's not your commuting to work, but the bits in between jobs, such as example, fuel or train fares. And if you're self-employed, those business costs, so you'll complete a self-assessment and the business costs will come out before you declare your final income on the self-assessment. So that might be things like a computer you only use for work, but that would be special rules under sort of self-employment. So again, if you're thinking about increasing your hours or asking for a pay rise, there may be an option there as well to sort of maintain a little bit more income. But one of the key ones, if you're just slightly over, is to pay a bit more into your pension. So in the short term, you might think, oh, I can't afford to do that. But if that means you get carer's allowance, then it would almost be silly not to. But also quite often where we're thinking as carers, we're also thinking about the longer term, what's in our pension pots. Any opportunity to boost that is going to benefit us in later life as well, when obviously with the state pension, carer's allowance payments will stop. So that could be an extra source of small amount of income for us as well in our pensions pots as well. And a very tax efficient way to give as well. Carer's allowance is taxable. So for a lot of people will still sit under that the personal allowance threshold, but it might be relevant, for example, if halfway through the year, your caring situation changes or your work situation changes and you start earning more money, or if like you're claiming carer's allowance for half of a financial year, where the other half of the financial year you were working and you were paying tax. So just something where people might think that might not be relevant, but it is relevant in your overall tax situation. So let's also think about where we can get more support and where we can really check out our individual situations around benefits. When it comes to things like universal credit, legacy benefits, pension credit, and things like that, you're really into the territory there of really would be good to speak to a benefits advisor and make sure they're checking that you're sort of got the right balance of things and have made the right decisions to get the best financial position for both now and for the future. Let's talk a bit about how Mobilise can help you. What are the different ways that Mobilise can help you? Because that can be a bit more instant. We're here 24/7. We will never replace a specific benefits advisor that's looking at your unique, complete situation for now and the future. There will always be a place for that, and your local carer support organisations too. But what can help? So there's things like the financial toolkit, which will, and there'll be a link here and we'll share links in the community as well, is a great way, as I said, of just having an overview of what you might be entitled to so that you know if it's even worth exploring further. Okay, so the financial toolkit is one. And as well as the main benefits, what will come out of that is then like a second stage where you're looking at other things that might be a bit hidden, like are there some grants, discounts, and other things to consider as well. So it kind of helps you to work through that step by step. If you're a real step-by-step person, you want to go at your pace, there's a course as well on the Mobilise Hub on finances as well. So you can just work through it step by step as well, but you take yourself through it rather than have an advisor take you through it. But I think that's a great way to tackle it as well, or even a great way to prepare for a conversation with a benefits advisor, because you're kind of going to know some of the things, and it might mean that conversation takes less time where they have to explain things to you. That'll give you a bit of background as well. The other one is in the community. So sometimes asking a question, if you've got a bit confused and you've Googled and it's all gone a bit like, oh, I don't understand, is ask a bit of a question. What we need to look out for is people sort of just guessing what they think the answer is. But the gold is when someone says, I'm like you, this was my situation, this is what I did, and this is what was relevant for me. That might give you a bit more of a pointer in the right direction about which things to think about and which things to not think about. So important to kind of ask those questions. A place to share just how difficult it is to share tips on discounts, carers cards that you might come across, other organisations that you know are doing special discounts that may not particularly be carer focused, but might be great for us. So for example, when Morrison's cafes were doing free or discounted lunches, where the Octopus Energy app gives out free coffee and things like that. Sometimes we need to find a little win to cheer us up. And these things don't make a big financial difference, but they do give us a little bit of a win, don't they? A little bit of uplift. So all those things can be helpful too. So do share those things in the Mobilise Hub as well. The other thing, again, thinking about our feelings and how an emotional issue this can be, there's the overwhelm bit, which hopefully we can help you with the course, with what's online, or maybe reaching out to a benefits advisor and maybe managing some of that overwhelm generally to give you the headspace to focus on this. We can't fix everything at once. one thing at a time can be a great approach to deal with some of that as well. The other is about the sense of injustice and the stressfulness that it kind of feels, that it can feel because of these low rates of benefits and the small changes. It can feel like we're not being heard. It can feel like other people don't care. There's a lot in the media at the moment around people with disabilities claiming benefits, etc., and the work-related benefits, which is really tough to hear because we know the truth and these people don't know. They don't know our lives and our situations, so it can feel very hurtful. So connecting with each other over that is helpful, but stirring each other up over it is not helpful. If we're really stirred and we want to really make a difference, there are ways of campaigning. There's the We Care campaign, which is from a carer's point of view, very light touch. You don't need to do much, just add your voice to their campaigning, add your examples. Carers UK will have conversations in Parliament and represent carers in Parliament. That's a huge part of their job as the national organisation supporting carers. And locally, there may be active groups, etc. And you may even be able to do something as simple as, send a template letter to an MP. We haven't all got time to sit and write and craft those letters, but those template letters can be helpful as well. So keeping in touch with your MP about the situation can be helpful too. Yeah. And then we have to think about how much we want that feeling to impact our day-to-day life, how much we want to keep that rhetoric going round in our head and driving us nuts. So sometimes we just need to be able to find a way of parking it as well and noticing the impact that focusing on that is having. So that might be stepping back from social media. That might be stepping back from conversations and avoiding the topic with certain friends who you know what they're going to say. It just reinforces the stressful feelings for you. So think about how you manage that for yourself as well. I know that doesn't solve it, but sometimes that's the bit that's within our control as well. So something to think about there, but also it's really tough. I can't make that go away, unfortunately. So carer's allowance and carer support payment, things that don't count as earnings. So money received from an occupation or private pension. So if you had a private pension that maybe starts paying out after 55 and you start to draw that down, that doesn't count as earned income when it comes to carer's allowance, which seems like, that's great for those people, but might seem a bit unfair for other people as well. So it's one of those lesser talked about things. People don't like to shout about it when for once the system is working for them. Contributions towards your living or accommodation costs from someone you live with. So if you've got someone paying into those things, so not a tenant or a boarder, but someone, I don't know, if you've got an adult child who stayed living with you and they're paying a little bit for their bed and board to sort of help them learn to manage financially and become independent, then that money. And the first £20 a week and 50% of the rest of any income you make from someone boarding in your home, and a loan or advance payment from your employer as well. So sometimes we may have mistakenly thought these were earnings and not claims. So also good to have a look at those things as well. And if you're paying for a carer so that you can work, and again, it may not actually leave you any better off, but maybe the decision you want to make for other reasons. If you pay a carer, and this is direct from the government website, if you pay a carer to look after the disabled person or your children while you work, you can treat care costs that are less than or equal to 50% of your earnings as an expense. The carer must not be your spouse, partner, parent, child, or sibling. So it does exclude a lot of situations straight away. For example, if you earn £100 a week after tax and national insurance and spend £60 a week on care while you work, you can treat £50 of this as an expense. So that expense comes off the total you're earning to get the new total to try and get under that £196 a week. It's probably clear as mud, actually. It's only once you've got an actual situation that you want to put through these criteria that you can start to work it out. And that might be your current situation or the situation that you're anticipating. Like I'm thinking about returning to work or thinking about having a job and just trying to work these things out. So those criteria, they're on the government website as well, but just make sure you don't forget about those and get someone to support you to look through it if it is a bit too complicated. Don't give up if it's too complicated. That's just a sign to get more support. But thank you, everybody. Just check in with those emotions, okay? If we're all stirred up, just kind of, I'll be doing this all week, shake it out if we need to get rid of some of that emotion and the stress about it. We don't need that adding as well. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Hope you get a little bit of sunshine and fresh air today. Take care. Bye bye.